was completely different. So this was a world now without Ryanair, without EasyJet. It was a world for Aer Lingus, the airline I worked for, where their network in Europe was 6 cities. It's now almost 46 cities. And aviation and air travel was still very much the preserve of the few. It's quite expensive to travel. And people were still traveling by sea and by ferry and by coach around Europe. So it wouldn't be until the early 90s when Ryanair and EasyJet came along that people were able to swap traveling on the ferry to traveling by air. And I think that's the biggest change that I've witnessed has been the evolution and the growth and success of the low-cost carrier sector, because it's not only brought travel to the masses, so to speak, it's also brought aviation to airports and airfields around the world, particularly in Europe, that never saw them before. And that's been good for local economies and local tourism. So a very different time. And if you can imagine, an airline ticket now is an email. When I started, an airline ticket was a 4 coupon piece of paper with red carbon at the back. And every time you traveled, one piece of the ticket was taken and given to the airline. And you can imagine the paperwork involved in all of that. So, pre-internet, pre-low-cost travel, very different than what it is now. The quality of service that the passenger enjoys now is only a fraction of what it would have been in the past. And I think that's down to the fact that the tickets are so cheap. The airlines are successful because they keep their costs very low. So they maybe, don't offer as much to the customer as maybe another carrier. Like I've worked for Emirates as well, which is obsessed with service and obsessed with experience and how the passenger gets on. And I remember people asking me the difference between working for Aer Lingus and working for Emirates. And in Aer Lingus, it was always how much cost can we save? What can we take away from the customer? Whereas in Emirates, people wake up every morning wondering how much more we can give the customer. So it's a whole different perspective. But certainly, it's interesting that as low-cost carriers began to grow, people were tolerant of low service because they felt, well, I'm getting what I'm paying for. But that's actually beginning to change now. And you see Ryanair bringing out a customer charter, always getting better. You see EasyJet now being distributing their fares in the CRS systems for travel agents, going after that elusive business passenger. So they're upping their game now and realizing really that customers are demanding a lot more value. And at the same time, the full service carriers are bringing their prices down. So the line's beginning to blur between the low cost and the full service. And I think the customer is the winner because value for money is really what it's all about. Cheap fares now used to be a wonder. I got a great bargain. Cheap fares now, particularly on short haul, is a hygiene factor. The customer expects it. And it's now, what else can I offer that'll persuade you to travel with me? And it could be my schedule. It could be the destinations I fly to. It could be other little tricks on the sides. But the whole KPI, if you like, or USP of the low-cost carriers being price, that's kind of moved into the background now. People take it for granted. It's what else can you give me? And I'll happily travel with British Airways instead of EasyJet for maybe £10 more if I'm getting something extra. So the customer is the winner, really, because the competition is so intense between the carriers.